Good morning, friends. Good morning. Welcome to another week. Today is Monday, July 25th. And I hate to say this, but it means 5 months till Christmas. Uh, uh, we're at least partially ready, I guess. We've got an idea of where we're going in Christmas time and Advent. Who's we? Well, the folks here at Christ United Methodist Church, including myself, Pastor Brian, hence the term PB, hence our title of our program, PB Reads the Bible. And this is another episode of that program. And thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. And some folks live and other folks not. Other folks watch the recording. In both cases, I know you're taking time out of your lives to watch, to participate, to join together in this way. And now I notice again that Facebook, for some reason, still isn't giving notifications for these videos. And I don't understand why, because it worked yesterday when it gave out notification for our worship experience, but it's not giving out notifications for this Bible study. That's irritating me. But so I'm going to, excuse me, probably talk for another minute or so to give more people a chance to connect with us today. As we continue our journey through the book of 2 Samuel, today is episode 6 on our journey through 2 Samuel. So we will be looking at chapter 6 in order for that to happen. But in the meantime, while we're before we get into that, like I said, give more people a chance to connect up and to check in. And go ahead and check in. Let me know that you're there and you're watching, because otherwise all I see is a number. And I like to know more than a number. I'm not just a number. I'm not a number. I'm a name. Good morning, Marcia. Grateful for the much needed rain today. Oh, yes, we need lots of rain down here too. Came down pretty heavy the other night, briefly. So we still need much more of it. I think we got about 10 drops yesterday, and I got 2 drops on my car this morning. So they are calling for rain today. Hopefully we'll actually get that. A good morning, John. Great to have you with us today. This is wonderful stuff. This is wonderful. Like I said, we'll just give folks a couple more minutes. Oh, I see a number of people joining, which is great. Always like more. Always like more. And if you're not able to join live, still check in, still let me know that you're watching, and still ask questions or make comments. I do go back into the stream multiple times to make sure I didn't miss anything. Sometimes I don't see them until after I get out of until after I finish the video and get out of Facebook and then go back in. Good morning, Cheryl. Great to have you with us this morning as well. And again, yes, it is Monday morning. The 25th of July. July is almost done. And I really hate to say this one. That means summer is almost over. Oh, hate that thought. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started on chapter 6. This is episode 6 on our journey through 2 Samuel. So we will be looking at chapter 6. Now, it is, don't get me wrong, because it is all about David. It really is all about David. But on the surface, it almost looks like it's about the ark. And the ark plays a role in today's narrative. In fact, some say that it is an ark narrative, that it's a story about the ark. I would disagree. And so would at least some commentators, Bible scholars, probably not all, that it's not really about the ark. The ark plays a role, but everything is pointed at David. It's really all about David. And so we'll discuss that. Didn't get a notification today. Yep. Okay. So yeah, see, I don't know why I got a notification yesterday when we went live for worship, but did not get one today for this. I just did. Wow. We're like 5 minutes into the video, and I finally get a notification that we went live. So I don't know. Facebook is weird. All this stuff is weird. Anyway, so it's not a, directly about the ark. The ark plays a role, and a pretty important role, but it's not directly an ark narrative. Just as a reminder, try to set this in your mind. And if you followed First Samuel with me, this is a reminder. If you didn't have the opportunity to go through First Samuel with me, don't worry about it. We're going to briefly fill you in as a remind folks. Thinking back to First Samuel, and I think it was chapters 4-6, was definitely an ark narrative. It was all about the ark being taken from where it was being housed, going out to the field for battle, believing that they could control God and control God's power and make God help them be victorious against the Philistines. Didn't work. The Philistines captured the ark, and then we have the stories about the idols of in Dagon's temple, and the god losing its hand, and the god Dagon losing hand, losing head, and all that kind of stuff, being head bowed down before the ark, all that kind of stuff taking place. And then we also have the story of them, they moved it around, and there were various punishments, so to speak, bad things, curses happened upon the people, particular wherever the ark was, not blessings but curses. And then we have them putting it on a cart, along with with a couple oxen, cows, and taking the without any direction from people, the cart going where it needed to go, directly into Israel, and the Philistines watching surreptitiously from a distance. Okay, so we remember that from First Samuel. Keep that in mind and look for the parallels in this story. There are parallels, and yet they're significant differences, almost opposites, sort of at the same time. Okay, as we go through. Excuse me. Now, as a reminder too, from last week, from chapter 5. Chapter 5 had the story of two of David's military victories over the Philistines. And the second one especially was a tremendous victory. All right, so that's where we ended. That's where the story ended. Now listen to the words as it begins. Chapter 6 begins with this: David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. Pause. Having just read the story of those multiple battles, these opening words sound like David is getting ready to go out for another battle, right? It doesn't it? It has those words in it. David again. So it's like it's saying again. So this is a repeated action. Gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. Excuse me. I don't have water. Those words, chosen men, have military context to it. So we expect this to be the beginning of another battle, another war story. Then we get to verse 2. David and all the people with him set out and went from Baal Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of Yahweh of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. Pause. Whoa. So it's not a war story. It's not a military battle. It's David and all these men, 30,000, going to retrieve the Ark of the Covenant, bring it from Baal Judah, to bring it up from there, meaning to take it to Jerusalem. And they refer to the Ark by its full name, shall we say. It's the full name of it, the Ark of God, which is called by the name of Yahweh of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. Pause. Now that Yahweh of hosts is the military, or speaks to the military aspect or character of Yahweh, according to them. It's the divine warrior title. Yahweh of hosts means God of the armies, God of the armies, Yahweh of the armies, who is enthroned on the cherubim. So it's, although it's not a military story, they're using the military language about the ark, and that's why they're going, and they're going to bring it from there to Jerusalem. From there to Jerusalem. They carried the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were driving the new cart with the ark of God, and Ahio went in front of the ark. David and all the house of Israel were dancing before Yahweh with all their might, with songs and lyres and harps and tambourines and castanets and cymbals. Pause. So we see some similarities to that other story, but we also see like the reversements of some of the points from the earlier story, the true ark narrative. It's on a new cart, but in this case, it's not being left just to the animals. It's being led in procession. We have people pulling the ark, walking in front of the ark, walking around the ark. David and all of his men dancing and singing and playing instruments. So it's not being left just to the animals for randomness or direction from divine direction. They're guiding it to where they want it to go. And it's not just the cart with the animals, with the Philistines watching from a distance. They're all right there. This entire army, the 30,000 plus people are there with the cart. And we are told about that it had been in the house of Abinadab. He had been the caretaker for the ark, presumably for a period of time. It was and the place names might be a little bit different from where they were back in 1 Samuel as far as where the ark was placed. But scholars think it's just the same place, just being called multiple different names. And so it's been there since it was returned to Israel. Excuse me. And we're not told whether Abinadab is still alive or not, but we are told specifically about his two sons going with the cart. Now, if Abinadab had been in charge of the ark, we might assume that he should have gone with them. And since he's not going with them, we can presume that chances are he has deceased. But his two sons are now the caretakers of the ark. We might almost say the priests involved with the ark. Okay. Picking up from there, verse 6. When they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah reached out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. Pause. Now there's, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, we'll continue. Reached out his hand and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. The anger of Yahweh was kindled against Uzzah, and God struck him there because he reached out his hand to the ark, and he died there beside the ark of God. David was angry because Yahweh had burst forth with an outburst from Uzzah. So that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day. David was afraid of Yahweh that day. How can the ark of Yahweh come into my care? So David was unwilling to take the ark of Yahweh into his care in the city of David. Instead, David took it to the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite. The ark of Yahweh remained in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, 3 months, and Yahweh blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. Pause. So there's a difference here. If you were following along in the NIV versus the NRSV, in verse 6, NRSV says that Uzzah reached out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it. The NIV it says that he took hold of it, but the Lord's anger burned against Uzzah because of his irreverent act. It's more specific. It says irreverent act. The Hebrew has one of those words that's very rarely used, and they're not 100% sure what it means. Suffice it to say that whatever it is that Uzzah did, and reaching out his hand to try to steady it, we might say that he did it too casually, and he didn't do it with proper respect. It's probably an insertion by a Deuteronomistic author to heighten the importance of the ark and religiosity and all that kind of stuff. I was going to say that's not important. It is important, but what's more important is some of the language in here. It says that Yahweh burst out, burst forth against Uzzah, right? And it says that David was angry. Actually, the word in Hebrew is the same word. So David burst out against Yahweh because Yahweh burst out against Uzzah. So this is, we're seeing an honest emotional reaction from David towards Yahweh about what had just happened. But we're also seeing something else. I'm going to get ahead of myself, so I won't say that. But I will say two other things. The ark ends up with the Gittites, right? With the Gittite, which is where David had to stay for a while, was with Gittites. So this story is about the ark, but it's also echoing David's progression and pattern at the same time. Now we'll also see when the ark gets to the Gittites, into this community, Obed-Edom, the Gittite, and is there for 3 months. Notice what happens. When the ark was moved around into different Philistine communities, those communities were cursed. But here, this community is being blessed. The person who is housing the Ark of the Covenant is being blessed by it. Picking up from there. It was told King David, Yahweh has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. And when those who bore the ark of Yahweh had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed an ox and a fatling. David danced before Yahweh with all his might. David was girded with a linen ephod. David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of Yahweh with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. Pause. When David hears that Obed-Edom is being blessed because of the presence of the ark, David himself goes out to retrieve it and bring it up, along with an entourage, I'm sure. But notice there is now, of course, Uzzah is dead, but there's no mention of Ahio. The reason being, any connection with Abinadab and with his service and lineage is cut off. They're no longer going to have anything to do with the ark and with worship or anything like that. We see David leading this, in charge of this procession, and every time they take 6 steps, he is performing a sacrifice of an ox and a fatling every 6 steps. My gosh, that's going to be a lot of oxes and fatlings. But the point is, David is doing that, a priestly job. David is dancing and bouncing around and shouting and singing, and he's wearing a linen ephod. Now, although they did have ephods for other things, the ephod has that priestly connotation to it as well. So he is performing the acts of the priest, and he is also wearing the typical clothing of a priest as he goes about this job of bringing the Ark of the Covenant. And where is he taking it to? He wants to take it to Jerusalem, bring it up to Jerusalem, which is what? The city of David. That's where he wants to bring it to. Picking up from there, continuing, as the ark of Yahweh came into the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, looked out of the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before Yahweh, and she despised him in her heart. Pause. Now, that's a little bit of an insertion, and I'm not going to talk a lot about this now because I'm going to wait until the bigger, when David and Michal actually come together at the end. What's important to notice here is just a little bit of the language. The relationship between Michal and David has obviously changed. Earlier in excuse me, in 1 Samuel, in the first half of the book of Samuel, several times when she is mentioned, Michal is mentioned, she loved David. She loved David. She loved David. It was at least 3 or 4 different times we were told that she loved David. We're not told anything about her reaction when she was retrieved from Palti or Paltiel, depending on which translation you have, from her other husband that she had been given to. But now we're told that she despised him in her heart. So we're learning something about the relationship between David and Michal. But just briefly, we'll talk more when we get to the ending of this. But they have brought the ark to Jerusalem, right? They have brought the ark to Jerusalem, to the city of David. It says very clearly, the city of David. What is really taking place here throughout this story is, and in the next few verses, so I'm going to be careful. I'll hold off. I'll hold off. We'll come back to that. They brought in the ark of Yahweh and set it in its place inside the tent that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and offerings of well-being before Yahweh. When David had finished offering the burnt offerings and the offerings of well-being, he blessed the people in the name of Yahweh of hosts and distributed food among the people, the whole multitude of Israel, both men and women, to each a cake of bread, a portion of meat, and a cake of raisins. Then all the people went back to their homes. David returned to bless his household, but Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "How the king of Israel honored himself today, uncovering himself today before the eyes of his servants' maids, as any vulgar fellow might shamelessly uncover himself." David said to Michal, "It was before Yahweh who chose me in place of your father and all his household, to appoint me as prince over Israel, the people of Yahweh, that I have danced before Yahweh. I will make myself yet more contemptible than this, and I will be abased in my own eyes, but by the maids of whom you have spoken, by them I shall be held in honor." And Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. End of chapter 6. Okay, now we can talk about everything, because I read the whole thing. So we again see David, the ark makes it to the city of David, and we again see David playing the role of priest. So what is really happening in this story, in this narrative in chapter 6, is the solidification of David's reign and bringing together the government and the religion in the same place. And at least on the surface, having the same person basically in charge of both. David is being positioned as king and as priest at the same time. That's not going to last. They're going to have official priests to do things, but we're seeing him establishing the religion and setting the location for this religion and for true worship and proper worship to take place in Jerusalem. So the city of David is becoming the seat of political and religious power and authority. Okay, that's what's taking place here, and David is doing that. And David is establishing He's establishing his place. He's establishing his place by pulling those two together. Okay, so verse 16 and then verses 20 and beyond. Oh, well, again, let's go to that middle part, 17 through 19. Let's talk some more about that. After doing all of the sacrifices, David gives out a bunch of stuff. He gives out some food to everybody, because the whole story is connected, and that's actually part of an ancient tradition and story involving the divine warrior. And we're seeing David as the symbol, so to speak, of the divine warrior. The divine warrior, of course, would be Yahweh, and most vividly placed in the ark. So to that extent, it's a story about the ark, as it's a story about the divine warrior returning. But David plays such a key role in the whole thing. We see him as the embodiment of the divine warrior, or the representative of the divine warrior throughout the whole thing. And he's really being established that. And the giving of gifts to the people is part of that ancient story, that ancient traditional story. So David gives them the gifts of food. Okay, so that's that whole thing there. All right, now back to Michal and to David, verse 16 and verses 20 through 24. 3. Let's notice something. Verse 16, Michal, daughter of Saul. Verse 20, Michal, the daughter of Saul. And then in verse 23, and Michal, the daughter of Saul. Every time she's named, with the exception of David said to Michal, although he, in his very first word, says, your father. We are being reminded, as if we needed to remember, who her father was. And so Michal is Michal, but she actually represents Saul's kingdom and succession to the throne, which is completely cut off with the last words of verse 23, that she had no child. There will be no uniting between the Saulite and the Davidic kingdom. The Saulite kingdom is gone. The Davidic kingdom is all that remains. The Davidic kingdom is all that remains. So she despised David in her heart. Why? We're not told why, which the ambiguity here is wonderful, because it can be, and we're left thinking that it's one, it's two, it's one, it's this, it's that, it's the other, or it's some combination of them, of why she despised David in her heart. Perhaps it's because she resents being treated as a political pawn. She has realized that she has been used by her father and by David as a political pawn. So now she despises him for that. Perhaps she despises him because she actually loved Paltiel and really appreciated the way he treated her. Remember, he followed after her and after Abner, crying and weeping over losing her. And maybe she resents David because of that. She resents and despises him because she's been taken away from a place where she was treated, at least in her mind, properly. Maybe she resents and despises David because he's not spending time with her. He has his other wives, and he is only wanted her as his wife because of political reasons, and doesn't care about her, and now she despises him for that. It could be any or all of those, but it's seeing him dancing around. And is it the dancing around, or is it the fact that everybody is loving him because he's doing this? He's leading this procession and dancing around, and she despises him. maybe it's because she sees him as happy and she herself is extremely unhappy. And so she despises him in her heart. We don't have to pick. I think that it's intentionally ambiguous by the author so that we can wonder what it is. And it's probably some form of combination of them, possibly quite possibly all of the above, not just one or two even. All right. Now she says, and you can hear that it's dripping with sarcasm, right? Her first words to David, how the king of Israel honored himself today. Dripping with sarcasm, because then as she goes through the rest of it, we realize very quickly that she thinks he has completely dishonored himself, uncovering himself today. And it's not specific, but we can presume that meant he as he danced and bounced around and his ephod flew, his genitalia was seen, became evident. He uncovered himself today, and she sees this as not being kingly, not being dignified, especially because maybe it's not just that act, but because he did it in front of his servants' maids, And the NIV actually probably gets it a little bit better. The NIV says slave girls of his servants. So in other words, the lowest class of people socioeconomically. That's what's really upsetting her, that you let yourself be seen by those people. We can read that in there very easily because of her wording. Your servants' maids, your slaves' maids, your slaves' slaves, the slaves of your slaves. You can't get much lower than that socioeconomically. And yet those are the people you uncovered yourself in front of. Now, David immediately reminds her, Yahweh, who chose me in place of your father to appoint me as prince over Israel, which is interesting. He doesn't say king, but prince, but he's been chosen by God. So perhaps his choice of word for prince is that he wants to at least believe that Yahweh is king. And so he is only prince, and it is Yahweh who I danced in front of. I danced before Yahweh. And you know what? I'm going to do even worse things in my own eyes, make myself even more contemptible. But by the maids you have spoken, by the slaves that you're talking about, they will hold me in honor. In other words, he's saying, you're right. Hey, maybe you're right. Maybe it was an unseemly thing for me to do. Maybe it was contemptible for me to do, but I really don't care because I did it before God. And if I'm going to do even more things that I think might be contemptible in my eyes, but the people will like it, and the people will honor me because of it. So he's reminding her that he has been chosen by God and by the people, to be the king, to be the prince of Israel, to be the king. And by them I shall be killed. That last verse. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. And this verse also is ambiguous, and perhaps intentionally so. Many people read that, and nothing wrong with reading it this way, that it was some sort of divine judgment, that she was basically cursed and her womb was closed and all that stuff. We think back to the book of Genesis, and that kind of story takes place several times. It doesn't say that here. Now, in other places where that's happened, it says it. The Lord closed her womb. Yahweh closed her womb, right? That doesn't say that here. Is that possibly what the author meant? Sure, sure, it's possible that that's what the author meant. It's also possible to mean that they just their relationship at this point is now completely broken. They have nothing to do with each other, especially not sexual intercourse. David perhaps is completely turned away from her and is devoting all of his time to his other wives, or she has completely turned her back on him, or both. Regardless, their relationship is now so broken that she does not have kids. But the more important thing is, if she had had kids, then there would have been a claim to the throne. So by her not having kids, we see that there is definitely no unification of the Saulide and Davidic kingdoms. There, the Saulide kingdom is definitely no more, and it is only David. It is only David. But of course, the problem of succession will arise, as we've mentioned before, because of all David's sons. All right, my friends. Hang on one sec. I do pray that this has been beneficial to you. I pray that God has spoken to you through something that we've read and said today, that you've learned something or relearned something as you go about your days, not just today, but every day. Keep those eyes and ears, both physical and spiritual, open to everything that your living, loving, active God is doing in your life and in the lives of those around you. When you see it, when you hear it, say, "Thank you, Papa," and then tell somebody about it. Until we meet again, my friends, be blessed. Be blessed. Bye.